A major shift is underway, and this is one of those moments where the pattern itself becomes the threat. While attention is usually focused on snow maps and temperatures at the surface, the bigger signal right now starts much higher above us. Over the past 24 hours, a powerful solar flare erupted from an unstable sunspot cluster that is rotating directly toward Earth. While the strongest energy missed us, the configuration remains volatile. And that matters because disturbances like this can interact with Earth's magnetic environment and create cascading effects across communication systems and satellites. It is not a doomsday scenario, but it is something being monitored closely as this active region continues to rotate into view. Now, back here on Earth, the atmosphere is already responding to a much more familiar force. Arctic air is firmly entrenched across the eastern half of the United States, and the cold is not letting go easily. High pressure dominates much of the east, locking in below-average temperatures and preserving snowpack across wide areas. This morning's satellite imagery clearly shows that snow cover stretching across the Midwest and into the Northeast, a visual reminder that the cold air mass is still very much in control. Across the plains and upper Midwest, temperatures are struggling to climb at all. In some northern locations, highs remain stuck in the single digits, with overnight lows dropping well below zero. That kind of cold turns even light snow into a problem because it accumulates instantly and refuses to melt. Wind chills add another layer of danger, especially for anyone traveling early or spending time outdoors. Farther east, light snow has been moving through parts of Michigan, Ohio, and the Great Lakes region, driven by weak disturbances riding along the northern edge of the cold air. These are not major snow producers, but they are enough to keep roads slick and visibility reduced at times. In eastern Michigan, mixed precipitation has prompted winter weather advisories, with a small ice risk adding concern for trees and power lines. This is not a high-end ice event, but even minor icing combined with cold can create travel issues quickly. Down in the southeast, the story shifts from snow to cold. Freeze warnings remain in effect across large portions of Florida, where temperatures drop to levels rarely seen for this time of year. Some locations are dealing with record-low daytime highs, meaning it never truly warms up. For Florida standards, this is extreme. Overnight lows dipping toward freezing across central parts of the state have already caused agricultural concerns and infrastructure stress. Out west, conditions are dramatically different. A strong ridge remains parked along the west coast and into the western plains, keeping temperatures well above average. Many western cities are running 15 to 20 degrees warmer than normal, while the east remains locked in cold. This sharp contrast is a classic winter pattern, and it often signals that changes are coming. As we move through the next 24 to 48 hours, the immediate weather remains relatively quiet in terms of major storms, but that does not mean risk is gone. Weak disturbances continue to ripple across the northern tier, bringing occasional light snow from the upper Midwest into the Ohio Valley and parts of the Northeast. Rain showers are also possible across parts of the lower Mississippi Valley and into East Texas, but rainfall chances remain modest, generally around 20 to 30%, with no severe weather expected. Temperature forecasts show just how uneven this pattern is. Maximum temperatures today range from well below freezing across the northern plains and upper Midwest to the 50s and 60s along the Gulf Coast and West Coast. Minimum temperatures tonight plunge below zero again in parts of the Midwest and Northeast, while freezing temperatures extend deep into Florida. This wide spread is one of the clearest signals that the pattern is stressed and unstable. Looking ahead, all three major models, the European, GFS, and Canadian, are in strong agreement on the short-term evolution. The cold remains dominant across the east, with only brief moderation in the south before another reinforcing push arrives. By midweek, another cold front slides from Texas through the Ohio Valley and into the Northeast, dropping temperatures again by 20 to 30 degrees in some areas. Snow chances increase slightly with this system, especially across the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, but accumulations look light for now. This is where uncertainty begins to grow. Small timing differences in these systems can change precipitation type and coverage quickly. A track shift of even a few dozen miles could mean the difference between cold rain and accumulating snow for some cities. That is why confidence is high in continued cold, but lower on exact snow totals midweek. Beyond midweek, attention turns to the larger pattern change developing late in the week. The jet stream begins to buckle again, allowing colder air to dive south out of Canada, while energy starts to work back into the west coast. This transition sets the stage for renewed snowfall chances in the Midwest, Great Lakes, and eventually the Northeast as we approach the weekend. For now, impacts outweigh numbers. Travel remains the biggest concern across snow-covered regions, while power and infrastructure stress continues in areas dealing with prolonged cold. Pipes remain at risk, especially in the southeast where homes are not built for extended freezes. Preparation remains critical, even without a major storm on the immediate horizon. This is Jet Weather X, and this pattern is not finished yet. The next update will focus on how cold the next Arctic push becomes, where snow chances increase later in the week, and whether ice risk begins to grow in the upper southeast. As we step deeper into this evolving setup, the key concern is no longer just today's cold, but how the next several days stack together. Prolonged cold patterns are far more disruptive than a single Arctic morning. When temperatures remain suppressed day after day, recovery slows, snowpack lingers, and even minor systems can create outsized impacts. Over the next 2 days, high pressure remains the controlling feature across much of the east. That means dry weather for many locations, but also very limited warming. Afternoon highs stay well below seasonal averages, while overnight lows continue to plunge. In the Midwest and Great Lakes, minimum temperatures remain dangerously low, increasing the risk of frostbite and stressing heating infrastructure. Rain chances remain limited through this period. Most of the eastern half of the country stays dry, with precipitation probabilities generally below 20%. Where precipitation does occur, especially along the northern tier, snow remains the dominant type, with snowfall probabilities in the 40 to 60% range for localized areas under passing disturbances. By midweek, attention turns to the next reinforcing shot of cold air. This surge drops south through the plains and into the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic. Maximum temperatures fall again, while minimum temperatures dip sharply overnight. This reinforces icy conditions, especially where daytime melting briefly occurs before refreezing after sunset. This midweek system is not a classic blockbuster storm, but its impact comes from timing and temperature. Light snowfall accumulations, even an inch or two, can create widespread travel problems when combined with strong cold advection. This is especially true in areas that have already been dealing with repeated freeze-thaw cycles. Ice remains a lower probability threat, but it cannot be ignored. In the upper southeast and parts of the Tennessee Valley, there is a small window where surface temperatures hover near freezing while moisture moves in aloft. Even a thin glaze of ice becomes high risk when trees, power lines, and untreated roads are involved. This is the type of scenario that causes slow burn outages rather than immediate, obvious damage. Model guidance from the European, GFS, and Canadian continues to agree on the overall structure of the pattern. Where they diverge is in how quickly energy begins to move into the west coast and how fast the eastern trough relaxes. That timing difference is critical because it determines whether cold air drains out smoothly or reloads again. Late week into the weekend is where the pattern grows more active. Fast-moving clippers begin dropping south from Canada, favoring snow across the upper Midwest, Great Lakes, and parts of the Northeast. Snowfall probabilities increase into the 50 to 60% range in these regions, though individual systems remain modest in strength. The real story during this window is not extreme snowfall totals but frequency. Multiple rounds of light to moderate snow, combined with persistent cold, lead to cumulative impacts. Roads stay slick, crews struggle to keep up, and fatigue sets in for communities that have already dealt with repeated winter events. Across the plains, cold continues to dominate. While snowfall is less frequent here, temperature departures remain significant. Highs stay below normal, and overnight lows dip into the single digits and below zero in some locations. Livestock, agriculture, and transportation all feel the strain under this type of extended cold regime. In the southeast, conditions fluctuate slightly but remain colder than normal. Daytime highs recover somewhat in southern areas, but nighttime freezes continue, especially away from the immediate coast. Snowfall chances here remain low for most locations, generally under 20%, but cold impacts persist. The Northeast faces the most complicated forecast going into the weekend. Snowfall chances increase, especially across New England and interior sections, while coastal areas remain sensitive to track shifts. A small change in the jet stream alignment could significantly alter who sees accumulating snow and who stays mostly dry. This brings us to the larger scale signal developing overhead. The polar vortex remains displaced, and signs are growing that additional disruption may occur later in February. While not immediate, this raises the risk of another significant Arctic outbreak beyond the current forecast window. A sudden stratospheric warming event, if it fully materializes, can weaken the vortex and allow loads of extreme cold to spill south. Historically, this leads to renewed cold waves and increased winter storm activity across the central and eastern United States. Timing remains uncertain, but the pattern supports keeping this risk on the table. This uncertainty is why forecasts must remain flexible. A shift of even a few days in the evolution of the upper-level pattern can change impacts dramatically. Right now, confidence is high in continued colder than normal conditions through the weekend, with moderate confidence in additional snow threats across northern regions. From an impact perspective, travel remains the primary concern. Even when snowfall amounts are modest, cold temperatures prevent effective melting. Power infrastructure also remains vulnerable, especially in areas that experienced recent ice or wind damage. Extended cold slows restoration efforts and increases demand, compounding existing problems. Preparation remains straightforward but essential. Keeping devices charged, ensuring backup heat sources are safe, avoiding unnecessary travel during overnight and early morning hours, and checking on neighbors are all practical steps that reduce risk. These actions matter most during prolonged patterns like this one. Looking ahead, the West Coast finally begins to see signs of change. As the ridge weakens, moisture returns, increasing rain chances and potentially higher elevation snow. This shift may eventually allow a more progressive pattern across the country,
but it does not signal an immediate end to winter in the east. The takeaway is clear. This is not a single event winter pattern. It is a sequence of cold pushes, light to moderate snow chances, and limited recovery time. While not every system will be severe, the cumulative impact can be just as disruptive. This is JetWeatherX, and staying ahead of these changes matter. Updates will continue to focus on temperature trends, snow probabilities, ice risk, and the evolving role of the polar vortex. Conditions can change quickly, and the next adjustment may redefine where the greatest impacts land. For now, remain alert, stay prepared, and respect the cold. Winter is still very much in control, and the pattern has more to say in the days ahead.